So the Fast-R 3 and the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 are the two top carbon plate racing shoes within the Puma range. They are both excellent shoes all round, I'd say, two of my favourite carbon shoes on the market, but they take quite a different approach, both in terms of their pricing and ride feel and things like durability as well, and I think they'll appeal to different runners as a result of that. The Fast-R 3 is the more expensive shoe. It's £260 or $300, whereas the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is £195 or $230. Fast-R 3 is an exceptionally lightweight shoe. It's 187 grams or 6.6 ounces in a UK 9, whereas the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is 215 grams or 7.5 ounces, which is more around the middle of the pack for carbon plate running shoes. They both have an 8mm drop, and the stack height is 40mm at the heel and 32mm at the forefoot for both shoes. And when it comes to the design of the both shoes, you actually have the same materials used throughout them, but clearly the application is very different with these two shoes to create the differences you find on the run. So they both have an ultra weave upper, but with the Fast-R 3, it feels like a very thin and minimal version of that material to try and make the shoe as lightweight as possible. There's really not much padding at all on the tongue, just a little bit around the heel, and you have got an internal heel counter there to add some structure at the back of the shoe, given that it is quite a wild design back there. Then the midsole is made from Nitro Elite foam, which is a nitrogen-infused aliphatic TPU material. It's no longer fully decoupled like it was with past versions of the Fast-R, but there are still substantial cutouts around the midfoot of the shoe to lessen the weight there, and really you have these two big chunks of foam connected by a thinner chunk in the middle there when it comes to the design of the Fast-R 3. You've got a carbon power plate running through the shoe and extending beyond the front of the forefoot, which Puma says adds a bit more leverage to your toe off to help increase the efficiency of the ride on the Fast-R. Then you've got a Puma Grip outsole with a very thin version of Puma Grip used at the forefoot, and then there's two strips of rubber at the heel of the shoe there as well. Again, this is all designed to be as minimal and weight saving as possible. Puma really went all out to create a very lightweight shoe with the Fast-R 3, which might compromise a little bit on durability. With the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, you've also got an ultra weave upper, but there's a fair bit more padding on the tongue of the shoe. In general, it seems a little bit more supportive all round, although you've not really got much of an internal heel counter at the back of the shoe. It also uses the nitrogen-infused aliphatic TPU version of Nitro Elite foam, but the midsole has a much more traditional design and geometry than the one on the Fast-R 3, which is obviously has lots of cutouts and is very rockered. You've got a much fuller midsole design with the Deviate Nitro Elite 3. There is a small cutout on the bottom in the middle of the midsole there to try and cut some weight. Got that full length carbon power plate running through the shoe, but it doesn't extend beyond the front of it. And then you've got a Puma Grip outsole, but a thicker layer and a bit more coverage, I would say, on the Nitro Elite 3 to help with durability and maybe give it even better grip than the Fast-R 3. Although I've had no concerns with grip with either of these shoes. It's always an area where Puma really excels, to be fair. When it comes to the fit of these two shoes, I found that both of them came out slightly long for me in my normal UK 9. Now, I had this with Puma over the past few years, but their training shoes are completely fine in the UK 9. I think there's more cushioning at the back of the shoe, so my foot sits a bit further forward in the toe box. But with the racing shoes, with the Fast-R 3 and the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, I felt I had a bit too much room around the front of my toes, especially for a racing shoe when I like quite a dialed-in design. It's been fine. I've done a lot of running and raced in both of these shoes, but I think I'd have potentially gone half a size down as someone who's often in between sizes, and it might be something to look at, especially if you like that slightly closer fit around your toes when you are going to go racing. When it comes to differences in fit, I do think the Fast-R 3 is a slightly more narrow shoe. It really does hug the foot, and if you have a wide foot, you might find you sit a little bit over the side of it, especially on the medial side of the shoe, but I have a narrow foot, didn't really have any concerns around that. No problems with rubbing at the heel or any kind of slippage around the heel or the midfoot. They're both got really good uppers that are very lightweight, but do hold the foot nice and securely on the run. So yeah, when it comes to sizing, it might be worth going half size down. If you're in between sizes, I'd probably go for the smaller one. Otherwise, they have a pretty good fit all round, I'd say. On to the run test, and I've done quite a lot of running in both of these shoes because I am a big fan of both. I've done about 160 kilometers in the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, and so far I've already racked up about 80 kilometers in the Fast-R 3, having just had it for a few weeks. I've raced in both shoes, I've done some really hard training runs in both shoes, and they've really impressed me kind of throughout testing, but there certainly are differences here that might make one more appealing to you than the other. So the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is a much more simple racing shoe. This is just a really lightweight, fast shoe with a really good foam in the midsole that provides a nice amount of pop and response, and just a design that works really well for lots of training as well as racing, I'd find. So when we initially tested it, it was actually around the summer months, and I did like the shoe a lot and used it for a couple of races, but over the winter I've grown to really love this shoe because I've done some really hard runs in it as part of my marathon training for Seville and London in icy conditions when basically every other carbon plate shoe wouldn't have been as good for me on those days. Now, a lot of that's just down to the Puma Grip outsole, which really is fantastic for winter running here in the UK, or if you're anywhere that's very wet, occasionally icy. It really does provide an upgrading grip on most carbon plate shoes. Like, I remember doing a long track session in this when the track was just basically completely white at the start of it, and there's a little layer of ice basically across the whole thing, and I was able to just do my reps in the shoe without really having to worry about grip, and eventually wore through the ice on the inside lane of the track. And also did a progression 30k in the shoe with a really hard one, actually. I think it finished with 10k at about 3:30 per k pace, so around basically my marathon pace. And again, that was on icy roads for lots of it, and just didn't have to worry about the grip. But you're also getting a high level of performance in terms of speed. So you're not just getting a grippy shoe. You can always pick up a nice training shoe for lots of grip, but this is really giving you that carbon plate edge with a really responsive ride that also protects the legs very well. So for long runs like that, which did end up being over 20 miles with kind of the warm up and cool downs. So yeah, having liked the Deviate Nitro Elite well enough when we first reviewed it, I really grew to love it as a carbon plate shoe. I do think it's a great option, especially that it is cheaper than most other carbon plate shoes out there. It's got a pretty natural ride, it's quite a stable one, it's affordable in terms of price. I think it will work for a really wide range of runners, and it's also pretty durable. Like, it hasn't really been beaten up at all by the work I've done in it. Like I said, I've done about 100 miles, including a lot of winter running in not very nice conditions, and yeah, it still feels really good underfoot. So certainly a really good shoe all round. And the Fast-R 3 has come in as basically a step up in terms of performance, I think, within the Puma range. Like, this is not a shoe that you're going to use for lots of training. It's a shoe built for pure performance to really shine on race day, with an incredibly lightweight design, a less durable design, and a less natural design than the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, but one that does deliver, I think, a step up in terms of performance. So you've got this obviously very rocker design with the extended carbon plate. You've got minimal foam around the heel of the shoe. It really is just built to run fast, and it has that same foam that you get in the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which does deliver that really nice poppy responsive feel, but you've got more of a rocker here, and you can really feel that really rolling up the top of that plate and just really getting a nice, smooth and powerful toe off from the Fast-R 3, which the Fast-R 2 had that as well, but in a much heavier shoe, and you're still getting, I think, that level of really propulsive oomph from the Fast-R 3, but what is a super lightweight shoe, which just means it's easier to use for kind of faster running as well, when you want to just be able to keep picking up your feet, because it's just easier to do that in a lightweight shoe. So I did a couple of training runs in the shoe before the London Marathon and used it for the London Marathon, where I ran my second fastest marathon, and the shoe was just a real dream to run in throughout that race. First off the race, I was feeling good, rolling well, and the shoe just really felt very good underfoot. I was running at a fast pace. Started to go off the rails in the last 10 miles, and just was starting to ease back and just trying to basically manage my effort to get through to the finish. And consistently was just running a bit faster than I thought I was, and ended up with a time that was way better than I expected to run, at around the kind of 28k mark, 30k mark, and I thought this is going to maybe be a bit of a struggle here, and I could go backwards very quickly. Just kept, I think, aided by the shoe, just rolling through pretty well and at a decent pace through that last kind of 10k of the race in particular. And that's what I've always felt with the shoe, actually, in the training runs I've done in it. Like, I've always been a bit surprised by the pace I've been putting out, and that was at the end of a long marathon block. So I was really fit because it was the end of a marathon block, but I also knew my body and my paces really well. And even taking into account the taper, like, I did 2 runs the weekend before the marathon. Did a park run where I went sub 16 for the first time in a long time at that park run, and just looked down at my watch about a mile and a half into the race and was really surprised how fast I'd gone. But then the run the next day, I think, really showed the value of the Fast-R 3 to me, where I did a 10-mile steady run just on heart rate and effort and that kind of thing. I wasn't looking at pace throughout it at all, and kept the heart rate at a pretty manageable level, and was really surprised at how fast I basically run that 10 miles, because it felt like I wasn't running as quick as I was, and that was exactly the same on race day in that last 10k. I thought I was just getting a better pace output than I expected for the effort, which obviously is always very encouraging for a shoe that promises to be really efficient. It does feel really efficient, and I think that's definitely the upgrade you get here over the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, where it's a really fast shoe. It's going to perform at the level of pretty much most carbon plate shoes, but I don't think it makes running those fast paces feel quite as effortless as or less effortful at any rate than the Fast-R 3 does. The downside is you lose a lot in stability with this shoe. Although I would say, as a heel striker who struggled in the second half of the London Marathon, I didn't find this heel design to be problematic for me. I was still able to get a nice roll through. It didn't feel like it was throwing me off or anything like that. The other downside is certainly durability. I've got this kind of dent in the line on the bottom of the shoe, which others have also reported, which I think is going to be something that you see with the Fast-R 3. Puma says it's going to last about 200 miles, 300k, and I think that's not the most durable shoe. It will do you for a lot of races, though, if you keep it to that. But I think the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is one that's going to really hold up very well to a lot of running and be at the more durable end of carbon plate shoes in general, whereas the Fast-R 3 is at the other end of that. It's also a more intrusive ride, though, the Fast-R 3, and some people won't like that. I personally really like the way it rocks through and always positions your foot to really roll up that carbon plate, but some will prefer the more natural feel and the more stable feel of the Deviate Nitro Elite 3. Did do a short run wearing both shoes at the same time. And, they both feel really good. They both feel very lightweight, very poppy, punchy off the forefoot, but the Fast-R 3 certainly more so, and it certainly feels a lot more rockered. You really are thrust forward with that carbon plate compared to the more traditional feel of the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which does benefit in some ways. It makes it more suitable for general use and training, I think, and it might be a more appealing option to those who don't like very unnatural rides, but the Fast-R 3 feels faster, and I think it is a bit faster. So onto the verdict, you've got two really great carbon plate shoes here. Like at the moment, the Fast-R 3 is a bit tricky to get hold of, but it'll sure be more available in time. And if you are picking between them, I think there are differences here that might make one or the other more appealing to you as a runner. Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is excellent value for a carbon plate running shoe. Like it comes in cheaper than most out there, while I think being right up there, like a really close to top tier carbon plate racing shoe. I've only really got two shoes in my top tier of carbon shoes, and the Fast-R 3 is one, with the Asics Metaspeed being the other. But this is a fantastic shoe that I think can go toe to toe with most of them. It's going to deliver a really fast ride while also having a lot of added benefits. Not only is it cheaper, but you've got fantastic grip here. That's a cut above most carbon plate shoes. You've got a durable design, quite a natural feeling shoe that I think will work for lots of runners, especially if you're looking at your first carbon shoe or in general don't like excessively rockered shoes. This is going to be a really good option. It's a very fast shoe. It's not as flat out fast as the Fast-R 3 for me though, and this is a shoe built for purpose that has really excelled in that purpose so far in my testing. Certainly think it's one of the best racing shoes out there at the moment for any distance. I think if that's what you're looking for, if you're putting in loads and loads of training for one big target race and you really want the shoe to help you shine the most on that race day, the Fast-R 3 is the one I'd go for out of these two shoes, even though it is a fair bit more expensive. However, if that's not you as a runner, if you're someone who likes to race a lot, does mixed terrain races, it's more out there for the fun of it, but still wants to run fast, crucially, the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 would do that job really well. It's also a slight case having both of them. Like the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 almost acts as like the ultimate super trainer in some ways. If you like very minimal shoes and don't mind the fact it's not as supportive as other super trainers out there, can pick up a lot of hard training sessions, like I say. Got great grip here, and pick up a lot of races if you're someone who likes to do lots of park runs or lots of club races where it might not be your big goal race, but you still want to do your absolute best in it, compete in it. Then the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is the perfect shoe for that. And then you maybe save the Fast-R 3 for a couple of really crucial training runs, and then the main goal race in your block in particular. So yeah, that's kind of how I'd break these two down. The Fast-R 3 I think is the faster shoe for sure, but the Deviate Nitro 3 has a lot of appealing characteristics that might make it the better pick for lots of runners. That's a comparison of the Fast-R 3 and the Deviate Nitro Elite 3. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.